The banners that fly above the floor of Boston Garden tell a story unprecedented in professional sports. 8 consecutive world championships, 11 and 13 years. Truly a tradition in greatness. Boston has had its share of superstars. In fact, the Celtics have had more all-time greats than any other professional basketball team. And 3 men were on the latest All-Star team, more than any other club. But this isn't what's given the Celtics their tradition of greatness. It's something else. It's the blending of the individual talents into a team that can win. Individual greatness wins fame. Team greatness wins championships. The tradition started with Red Auerbach and his talent for picking the right man for the job. For the 1956-57 season, he chose 2 men who fit into his team plan and built the tradition of greatness for the Celtics. Boston drafted Tom Heinsohn, put him into number 15, told him he was their scoring forward, and score he did. He won Rookie of the Year honors that season. As a member of the first 8 championship clubs, Heine averaged over 18 a game. He knew how to find the open man. The Celtics obtained a left-handed center, Bill Russell, gave him number 6 and orders to intimidate opposing shooters. And intimidate them he did. Sometimes under the basket, sometimes in the middle of the floor, and he got the Boston offense going while scoring a few himself, averaging over 15 points a game. But it was Bill Russell defending his basket that the fans remembered. For Russell added a new word to the NBA vocabulary. The word was rejection. Rejection of any ball that he could sweep back. A rejection so devastating that it affected the entire offensive efforts and styles of Celtic opponents. Auerbach added the left-handed center and scoring forward to a rebounding forward, Jim Luskatoff, and completed the team around 2 of the greatest backcourt men ever to play in the NBA. Bob Cousy could hurt the opposition so many ways. He could score, and oh, how he could pass. Very often the man Cousy passes set up was number 21, Bill Sharman, the other Boston super guard. Boston built championship upon championship on this nucleus. Celtics introduced a concept new to the game. Usually a team's play slipped when a substitution was made, but not in Boston. The Celtics had number 23, Frank Ramsey. Ramsey became known as Boston's sixth man, and he actually picked up the tempo of the game when he came in. And this held true whether in home whites or Celtic road green. Boston also gained a reputation for gradually breaking in superstars of the future so they could fit into the Celtic system while the team kept up its championship caliber. Sam Jones reached superstar class, eventually replacing Bob Cousy as the finesse guard who could slice through defenses and shoot over them, putting in over 15,000 points in his career. He could also set up his teammates. Casey Jones set the example for the league as the backcourt defensive specialist who could not be ignored on offense. Casey could often be found on the whip end of the fast break. New Celtics worked with old Celtics, and Boston rolled on to even greater heights as the 50s turned into the 60s. With the 60s came an unheralded draft choice from NYU. Tom Sanders contributed to 8 championship teams, and Thatch steadied many a Celtic team with his quiet contributions to their tradition of greatness. The tradition of greatness extends to today's Celtics. The left-handed center is still there. He's shorter, huskier, and has red hair. But Dave Cowens has followed the tradition by winning the Most Valuable Player award in the NBA. Rises to all challenges. He's at his best in playoffs, and he won the Most Valuable Player award in the All-Star game, something Boston centers are supposed to do. Cowens plays all out. He doesn't believe he's really been in the game unless his knees are bloody. His strength is also evident on defense and on the board. His quick outlet passes have started many a Celtic fast break. His speed and agility seem to give the Celtics 3 forwards on the floor. Boston center once again revolutionized the thinking in the NBA. The center is usually the last man down the floor and certainly isn't supposed to lead the fast break. But they forgot to explain this to Dave. So Dave Cowens follows the tradition of Celtic centers being left-handed. Just a little different and somewhat great. JoJo White has become the Celtics' finesse guard, following in the path of Cousy and Sam Jones. Some experts feel White may be the purest shooter to ever don a Celtic uniform. He can nail the opposition with his outside shooting. His penetration, or finesse them by drawing the defense to him and finding the open man with a pinpoint pass. In his first 5 NBA seasons, he was an All-Star selection 4 times. Another Boston tradition, for it's a rare All-Star game that doesn't have a guard from Boston. Boston still has its defensive guard. He's bigger than his predecessors, but Don Chaney always does the Celtics' tough job of defending the opposition's high-scoring guard. When Chaney broke in, he was reputed to be the worst shooting guard in the league. In the true Celtic spirit, Chaney has worked on his game until now. Opponents know better than to give him an open shot. His scoring average has gone up every season he's competed in the NBA. At 6'5", Don Chaney has been able to add rebounding strength to the club and is a most effective talent under the offensive basket because of his great ability to move without the ball. The combination of White and Chaney follows the tradition of a finesse guard who quarterbacks the team and a defensive guard who can hurt you with his scoring ability when you least expect it. The Celtics have been breaking in a backcourt star of the future in number 44, Paul Westphal. Again, this follows the Boston tradition of bringing their guards along to superstar status so that excellence will be spread out over the years without interruption. The Celtics instill their youngsters with the idea that a complete player works at both ends of the court. The traditional Boston rebounding forward spot is filled by not one, but 2 veterans who alternate between that spot and serving as the Celtics' 6th man. Don Nelson was picked up by an alert Boston front office in 1965 after being waived by the other league team. He's been an important part of 3 World Championship Celtic teams. Nelly has given younger players inspiration and practical demonstrations of what a never-say-die spirit with second and even third efforts can mean. Paul Silas follows in the tradition of Bailey Howell, Wayne Embry, Willie Knowles as the kind of veteran player the Celtics trade for, the kind that have put their game together and have several good seasons left. The rebounding forward who takes over for the retired Satch Sanders. He arrived in Boston just at the peak of his career, and first season with the Celtics proved his worth by pulling down more rebounds than in any of his prior 8 seasons in the NBA. Nelson and Silas have been a perfect complement at forward for the man who has come to represent the spirit of the Celtics, John Havlicek. Havlicek has been Mr. Everything for Boston. He originally took Frank Ramsey's spot as the Celtics' 6th man. Havlicek used his 6'5" frame in both the front line and the backcourt as the Celtics employed him as a swingman coming off the bench to pick up the Boston attack. Working into the regular lineup as early as Celtic stars retired, Hondo established himself as the superstar of the NBA. Always at his best when the pressure was on, Havlicek has been called on to get the points in the clutch. He has given the Celtics an offensive weapon to combine with Boston's high-scoring guard. Through the years, Havlicek has combined with Cousy, Jones, and White, as each of these stars took that traditional role. His 54 points in one game is an all-time team record. So is his scoring 2,338 points in one season. The dependable one has put in at least 1,000 points every season and has had several of over 2,000. On January 11th, 1974, Hondo became only the 8th man in the history of the NBA to score 20,000 points. It's a very select circle indeed. It was the first time a Celtic had reached the 20,000-point level, and of course makes John the greatest scorer in Celtic history. It was a proud night for Boston, for John Havlicek, his fans, and his lovely blonde wife, Beth. John Havlicek brings a tradition of winning to the present Celtics. As team captain, he leads by both example and inspiration. But Havlicek is more than scoring. He's a team man and a team leader who is determined to have the Celtics back on top of the NBA again. It looked like he would lead them to the title in 1973 until a shoulder injury stopped Hondo and the Celtics in the playoffs after the team had built the highest winning percentage of any Boston team in history. But it's a team built in the tradition of other great Boston teams. Outstanding ball handlers, shooters, and rebounders who are even better as a total team than they are as individuals. Although their eyes are always open to the future, the Celtics, like most successful teams, have very few new faces on the bench. Those who make the team, like Phil Hankinson and Steve Downing, are the choice picks. The most thankless roles on the club are those of backup center Hank Finkel and reserve forward Steve Kuberski. Both men must come off the bench and deliver, often in pressure situations. Artie Williams is a firebrand who gets off the bench and gets the club moving. Things happen when Williams goes into the game. There are a number of important Celtic wins that must be attributed to these men who come in cold and must get hot, fast. Because of the skill of the veteran reserves, the youngsters on the roster get even less playing time than they could on lesser clubs. But it is part of the Celtic master plan to build while winning. So New Englanders get an occasional look at the talent their teammates see at practice sessions, and the youngsters are fitting into the Celtic style of play. And that style is a running game. The fast break was patented in Boston. And it still thrives there. The breakneck pace pauses only momentarily when caught by our super slow-motion camera. The explosive offense is still there, now coupled with a fine defense. In 1950, Red Auerbach was brought in to make the Celtics something they had never been, a winning team. He gave New England fans much more. Besides never having a losing season, Auerbach established tradition. From winning championships, 9 in his last 10 seasons, his last 8 in a row, to letting fans know when the game was won. Was the last time the Celtics went outside the organization to find a coach. Since then, they've come from within. Bill Russell won 2 world championships in his 3 years as coach. But as it was pointed out, he had the NBA's best player at center. When Russell decided to call it quits, General Manager Auerbach found another Celtic great to take over the helm. Tom Heinsohn is a winner. The year he came into the league, the Celtics brought their first NBA title to New England, and Heine was the NBA Rookie of the Year. He was the gunner on 8 championship teams, but he was also a team man. And he still brings the fierce concentration of the competitor to the game. He hates to lose, he hates mistakes, and he keeps his players motivated and hustling. The Celtics have given New England something to cheer about, and their fans show their appreciation in many ways. Some conventional, some not so conventional. The fan-made signs in the Garden are unique. Don Nelson, who has been observing the Celtic scene for many seasons, gives a player's view of the fans and what those fans mean to the players.
Kind of gives you a pretty warm feeling because evidently you're doing something right if you have fans that are dedicated enough to put a sign up so everybody can see it. And not only that, but the fan reaction, not only to the signs, but the fact that if you're playing well, you know, they'll applaud you, and if you're playing poorly, well, they're not going to applaud you. But it's important. You might think that you're giving 110%, but when the crowd is really behind you, you're going to give something extra. Even if you think you're giving all you can, you dig down a little bit deeper, I think, and you come up with the extra thing that is important to win a ball game or possibly play over your head.
The Boston Celtics have inherited a tradition of greatness, but even more important, this Celtic team is currently building on to that tradition. The men who currently wear the green and white can't guarantee a win every game, but they do play the exciting, thrill-a-moment brand of ball that is the National Basketball Association. The throttle is wide open, the pace is breakneck, and the results are spectacular. The Celtics, win or lose, play the most exciting brand of ball in the world. and that's why it's been a pleasure just to be around. Being a witness to this tradition of greatness for over 20 years has been a most satisfying experience for yours truly, Johnny Moe.